Number 10. The hooded pituhui. Let's start off the list with one of the only toxic birds in the entire world. I am talking about the hooded pituhui, and its feathers contain one of the most dangerous toxins known to science. According to Australian Geographic, this bird lives in Papua New Guinea, one of the last truly wild places on Earth. It was first researched back in 1989 when a scientist from the California Academy of Sciences travelled to the country in search of the birds. He ended up catching a few and then sending them back to the United States for testing. After analysing the feathers of the bird, it turned out they did indeed contain extremely potent neurotoxic steroidal alkaloids that can cause paralysis, cardiac arrest, and ultimately death. It's the same kind of poison used in the infamous dart frogs of South America. In fact, gram for gram, this is one of the most toxic naturally occurring substances known to mankind. But why the heck is it found in bird feathers? The reason is actually because these birds feed on certain poisonous beetles, and they pick up the toxins from the beetles. The birds eat the beetles, and then the poison ends up almost being absorbed into the body of the birds, which it can then use to poison human people. It really is quite strange. Number 9. Hawksbill sea turtles. You probably wouldn't have guessed, but one of the most toxic animals in the ocean is actually the hawksbill sea turtle. Hawksbill sea turtles are omnivores. They pretty much eat nothing except seagrass, some barnacles, and a few small animals. In the Caribbean, hawksbill sea turtles actually feed exclusively on just a few types of sponges. In a single year, an average turtle will eat about 1,200 pounds of sea sponges. Outside the Caribbean, the same turtles will eat a more varied diet, including invertebrates and algae. But the weird part is that some of the sponges and some of the small animals eaten by these turtles are toxic, but they are not toxic to the turtles. Their body fat absorbs the toxins without getting the turtles sick, but then it makes the meat poisonous for other animals to eat. If you were to try and eat one of these turtles, you would probably get sick because they taint their own meat by eating toxic critters. It's kind of like accidental protection from ending up on a human's dinner plate. Number 8. The cane toad. This one might not actually be a big surprise for anyone. Some toads are known to be toxic, but in Florida, there is a particularly toxic toad that is becoming quite a nuisance to people who live in the state. While cane toads are probably not going to kill you, they're actually super poisonous to your cats and dogs. An adult cane toad carries enough toxins inside its fat body to ward off just about any predator. When this toad feels threatened, it will shoot toxin from its back. This stuff is not only toxic, it's super sticky too. It's like the toad shoots poisonous glue out of glands on its back. And if you have a curious cat or dog that decides to sniff a cane toad sitting in your yard, it could mean instant death for your precious animal. And God forbid your pet decides to bite a cane toad, because they will get a big gush of poison in their mouth. If you see one of these ugly brown toads hanging out in your yard, shoo it away and try not to touch it. And even though I said these toads live in Florida, that doesn't mean they can't live pretty much everywhere in the United States. They do prefer warmer climates, and they are most active after heavy rainfalls, but they live pretty much everywhere in the US. Also, if there are a lot of bugs in your area, you can bet there is a poisonous toad lingering somewhere nearby. Number 7. The Spanish fly. We all hate flies, but there is one fly you might not have heard of that is incredibly dangerous and toxic. Let's take a minute to discuss the Spanish fly. In reality, it's not actually a fly, it's a blister beetle, and it is super dangerous. This beetle has a unique defensive secretion which has actually been used as an aphrodisiac since thousands of years ago. But it doesn't work. Instead of getting all excited in the bedroom, a squirt from the Spanish fly would probably land you straight in the morgue. According to Wired, men actually used to lace women's drinks with the secretion from the Spanish fly to try and get them in the mood. But more often than not, it didn't end quite the way they wanted. The Spanish fly is dangerous because it can leak toxins out of its leg joints. Even if you just touch the stuff that comes from the beetle, it can make your skin bubble with nasty blisters. For example, if one of these beetles were to land on your neck and you decided to squish it, you would very quickly look like a person with a bad case of syphilis on your neck. It's not advisable. If you were even stupider and decided that you wanted to eat a Spanish fly, it would probably be your last meal. The poison inside its body is a powerful cyanide, and it has no antidote. It could literally strip away the lining of your stomach and make you bleed internally. Your kidney would try its hardest to purge you of the toxins, but at the same time your urinary tract would inflame and hurt a whole lot. The moral of the story is to stay away from the Spanish fly. Number 6. Crown of thorns starfish. It's always a little hard to tell what's poisonous in the ocean and what isn't. Everything under the sea is bright and looks dangerous, but not everything is. However, there is a creature out there you should definitely stay away from. It's the second largest starfish in the world, known as the crown of thorns starfish. It's unique, it's very pretty to look at. It can grow to be upwards of 30 inches, and it is dangerously poisonous. This starfish is called Crown of Thorns for a reason. All over its body are sharp spines that serve as a warning to any creature stupid enough to get too close. But this prickly starfish has another trick up its sleeve besides just being pointy. The spines contain neurotoxins and special starfish poison that are incredibly dangerous both to humans and to marine animals. Because the spines on the starfish are super brittle, they can easily stab through a wetsuit and puncture your flesh. And yes, if you are stabbed with one of these spines, you're going to be injected with a super dose of venom straight into your bloodstream. The result will be nausea, painful and swollen extremities, but probably not death. Many people think starfish are just stupid animals that grow on rocks and never move, but these creatures are actually quite smart. Some of them, like the Crown of Thorns starfish, can move at speeds of up to 12 miles per hour. Number 5. Rough-skinned newt. One of the most poisonous creatures in the entire world is one you would probably never expect. It is indeed hard to imagine that the rough-skinned newt could be 10,000 times more toxic than a dose of cyanide. But it absolutely is. There is no known antidote for the poison inside of these newts. Literally every part of them is poisonous. From the time the egg is laid, the poison begins to grow. If you were to eat a baby newt, some newt eggs, or even an adult, it would be the same tragic result. The poison stored inside the glands in their skin would cause you to die pretty much right away. This is because the poison is known as tetrodotoxin, and it's the exact same poisonous substance found in the Japanese pufferfish and in some dangerous South American tree frogs. Unsurprisingly, the rough-skinned newt does not have any predators. Even though your local garter snake is immune to their poison, it still doesn't dare to eat them. The only thing that kills the rough-skinned newt is the automobile. According to the Seattle Times, every spring they are massacred in the thousands as they try to cross the road to breed in their favourite ponds. And of course, habitat destruction is also gradually destroying the most poisonous newt in the world. If you're unsure what exactly a newt is, they are basically baby dinosaurs that look like lizards. But really, newts are just salamanders. The rough-skinned newt is the only known salamander that is active above the ground and during the daytime. This is because the newt has so much poison that it doesn't need to hide from any predators. Number 4. Striated surgeonfish. The striated surgeonfish is one of the only poisonous fish in the world. What's really strange about this fish is that it doesn't look poisonous at all. It looks like a totally normal fish, but it actually packs a deadly toxic punch. Just like most other surgeonfish, it has scalpel-like spines on its tail that are incredibly sharp, which the fish uses for both defense and offense. The fish lives in rocky coral areas no deeper than around 100 feet, and they typically live in large groups or schools of thousands. But the real curiosity with the striated surgeonfish is that it's one of the only herbivore fish in the world that is sometimes toxic. It's not naturally toxic though. It picks up its toxins slowly because of the algae it feasts on. The fish actually gets more and more poisonous as time goes on thanks to an accumulation of a certain toxin produced by something known as microscopic dinoflagellates, which it ingests whenever it feeds on algae. Number 3. Cone snail. You would never think a snail could be one of the deadliest creatures of all time living in the ocean. And while most snails are perfectly harmless, the cone snail is an absolute murderer. Cone snails usually lurk in the sands in shallow reefs, and if you accidentally surprise one while diving, you could die almost instantly without even feeling a sprinkle of pain. The cone snails are actually quite pretty to look at. They seem innocent enough, but all that outside beauty hides a deadly secret. It's all about the cone snail's harpoon. It basically has a long needle that sticks out from its mouth that it uses for attacking prey. This allows the cone snail to feast on fish, marine worms, and even other snails like some kind of cannibal. Even though the snail itself is slow, it can shoot its harpoon from its mouth in a split second. The harpoon instantaneously injects venom into your body along with a special anesthetic and painkiller. You might not even know you were stung. It often feels just like a pinprick, and you don't know what's going on until it's too late. Unfortunately, there is no anti-venom available for cone snails. And another pretty nasty thing is that you might not even die right away. It could take a few minutes or a few days for the symptoms to kick in. Some of the chemicals in the venom of a cone snail are 10,000 times stronger than morphine. Just imagine all of that stuff being injected right into your bloodstream. However, a 2004 report from the journal Nature claims that only about 30 people have ever died from a cone snail. So, the chances of it happening to you are pretty slim. Number 2. Poisonous catfish. This may be just the most shocking animal on the list. You would never in a million years think that catfish could be toxic. But a new study from the University of Michigan has found that there are at least 1,250 species of catfish that could be venomous. This is far more than what we previously thought. Of course, the chances of a human being attacked by a killer catfish in North America are super slim. They typically use their venom only to defend themselves against predatory fish. Catfish can still inflict a very painful sting on anyone dumb enough to grab one with their bare hands, but in North America they really aren't that dangerous. It's in other parts of the world where catfish have super toxic venom that can indeed be deadly to humans. Catfish have venom glands situated along bony spines at the edges of their dorsal fins and pectoral fins. When the catfish feels threatened, it locks its spines into place, and when a predator gets stabbed by one of the spines, a membrane surrounding the venom gland is torn and venom is released into the wound. This is totally bizarre. Honestly, who would have thought that catfish could be so venomous? What's even more interesting is that the same study is showing that the toxins inside of some catfish's skin secretions actually have the properties that accelerate wound healing in humans. This is all very shaky right now, but it looks like catfish could be the secret to turning into Wolverine. Number 1. The pus caterpillar. This is the pus caterpillar, and it looks like a toupee. It is also one of the most toxic caterpillars in the entire world, and as recently as 2020 they have been spotted roaming around eastern Virginia, according to the Virginian Department of Forestry. This thing doesn't even look like a caterpillar. It could almost be a brown clump of moss or a dirty toupee that fell on the ground. However, inside the hair of this caterpillar are lots of poisonous spines. According to National Geographic, if you touch the caterpillar, you will probably get a prick that feels pretty much the same as a bee sting. However, that bee sting will get worse and worse. You will come down with intense pain, a serious fever, brutal nausea, and symptoms of shock. It's probably not enough to kill you, especially if you get to the hospital on time, but you should definitely stay away from these caterpillars. They live in parks and anywhere near oak or elm trees. And they don't only live in Virginia. Pus caterpillars can be found all along the East Coast, from Florida to New Jersey and even westward all the way to Texas. Number 10. The giant toilet huntsman. First on our list of the biggest spiders ever is an enormous huntsman spider that was living in a family's bathroom only to emerge each time someone used the toilet. This is a pretty frightening guest to have living behind your toilet bowl. The Australian family even caught video of this monstrous beast crawling out from the back of their toilet like something out of a nightmare. Giant huntsman spiders are super common in Australia, and this story is a lot less unique in the land down under than you might think. Apparently, many Australians just kind of have to accept that big huntsman spiders are going to live with them. They are not going to pay any rent, and they're going to terrorise guests while using the toilet. What's really strange about this story is that the family reported that the huntsman spider would only come out when they flushed their toilet. Whether it was the noise that frightened the spider, or the arachnid just thought it would be funny to terrorise the family, your guess is as good as mine. Can you imagine finding an enormous spider like this in your bathroom? It's where you're most vulnerable, jeez. What would you do in this situation? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you're new here. We have lots more videos like these. Number 9. Goliath bird-eating spider. We have a lot of stories to talk about today, but first I want to mention the biggest of all the spiders. The largest known spider in the world is the male Goliath bird-eating spider. The species is found in the rainforests of South America, mostly in French Guiana, Guyana, and Suriname, but they have also been found in Venezuela and Brazil. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest collected specimen came from Venezuela in 1965, and it had a ridiculous leg span of 11 inches. That means this spider could cover your entire dinner plate. That's how massive it is. They only weigh about 50 grams, but what's really cool about the bird-eating spider is that it can live for at least 10 years. This spider is indeed a tarantula. It uses the hairs all over its body to sense vibrations both on the ground and in the air. And even though they are known as bird eaters, they don't actually eat birds very frequently. I mean, they are hard to catch. But the first time someone found one, the giant puppy-sized tarantula was chowing down on a hummingbird. The creepiest thing this spider does is rub its bristly legs together, making a hissing noise that is so loud it can be heard up to 15 feet away. That will give you some serious chills. Number 8. Giant imported spiders. This is probably a story that not many people are interested in hearing, but one of the biggest spiders ever, and definitely one of the scariest, is making its way to a city near you. It's called the Joro spider, and it's traditionally found mostly in Japan, Korea, and China. These spiders measure about 5 inches long, and are so big and mean that they can catch hummingbirds in their webs. And while these spiders are supposed to be half a world away in Asia, according to some news reports in 2020, the spiders are now in the United States. Specifically, they have made an appearance in the state of Georgia. The good news is that the Joro spider is not deadly, but a bite from one can definitely hurt. Honestly, the worst part is that they are frightening to look at. These spiders are huge, they are yellow and black, and they make enormous webs big enough to catch small birds and to seriously frighten you the next time you take a stroll in the park. According to an agent from the University of Georgia, these spiders most likely hitched a ride to the USA in crates that came through the Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Talk about illegal immigrants. Number 7. Human-sized web. Probably the last thing you want to see in the middle of your hiking trail is a spider web large enough to catch a fully grown person. However, it's more likely to happen than you may know, especially if you live in Missouri, where this enormous spider web was found just recently in 2020. The photo was taken by the Missouri Department of Conservation, and it's definitely shocking enough to spark a quick wave of arachnophobia. This huge and overly intricate web belongs to an orb weaver spider, but the good news is that no orb weaver spider alive has the ability to eat you. In fact, the spider web is more amazing than it is scary, even if you are terrified of spiders. Orb weavers are famous for building spiral, wheel-shaped webs between trees, in fields, and even in gardens. And just like their webs, orb weaver spiders are unusually large, super hairy, and even a little furry. Even though you could probably wiggle your way out of a web like this, you still probably wouldn't want to walk straight into it. It's basically a heart attack waiting to happen. Next time you're taking a scenic stroll in Missouri, keep your eyes peeled for giant webs. Number 6. Raining spiders. This story is actually so horrifying that it needed to be added to this list. These may not be the biggest spiders in the world, but they are definitely the most terrifying. The story comes to us from Brazil, where a horrific incident in 2019 had spiders raining from the sky. This is a real phenomenon that you would never want to be caught in the middle of. The incident was filmed in the south of Brazil, and in the video you can very clearly see hordes of huge black dots raining down from above. These are a special species of orb weaver spiders that are social and work together to build some of the biggest and most intricate webs you have ever seen, and they build them very high up in the forest canopy. But wait, if you look very closely you will see the spiders are not actually raining from the sky. They are suspended inside of probably the biggest spider web in the world. The web is so huge and so fine that it's basically invisible to the naked eye. These spiders work together to build what is essentially a huge net stretching across the treetops. Near the end of the video, you can see them moving across the web. It truly is the stuff of nightmares. Number 5. Brazilian salmon pink bird eater. The second largest spider in the world is the Brazilian salmon pink bird-eating tarantula. It's nearly as big as the Goliath, but it has a leg span of only 10 inches rather than 12 inches. You might even say these spiders are a little more interesting. At least, they look a lot cooler with their pink stripes and salmon-coloured hairs sticking out of their legs. They are found mostly in Brazil, and these kinds of spiders generally hang out on the forest floor inside of a burrow, or scurrying underneath dead logs and leaves looking for prey. And just like the Goliath spider, the pink bird eater has a confusing name. It doesn't really eat that many birds. Most of its diet consists of insects, frogs, lizards, and mice. Number 4. Biggest funnel web spider. The biggest funnel web spider in the world has been found in Australia. This happened in 2020, and according to a report from ABC News, the ridiculously massive funnel web spider was actually handed in to the Australian Reptile Park near Sydney, where keepers promptly named him Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'm not sure what the name is all about, as they don't even look anything alike. But in any case, this huge spider was found after the reptile park actually called on people to go out and catch as many funnel web spiders as they could and donate them so that the park could milk the spiders for their venom to create very important anti-venom. The director of the Australian Reptile Park has said that the capture of the giant funnel web spider is amazing because the one spider is so big it will produce enough venom to save multiple lives. According to the park, the venom collected from these spiders saves around 300 lives each year. Number 3. The giant spider that was really a crab. The biggest spider to have ever existed on our planet has been denounced as a fraud. You might remember the fossil of a creature unearthed in Argentina quite a few years ago that was quickly labelled the biggest spider in existence. It's even appeared in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest spider, with a plaster cast of the animal being exhibited in museums all over the world. It was actually a fact for over 20 years that the Magarachne cervini was the biggest spider before it went extinct. But just recently, an expert in arachnids from the University of Manchester has brought forth evidence claiming that this creature was never a spider at all. The expert is claiming the spider to actually be a sea scorpion. And he might be right. Further research has shown that the giant spider actually had large claws and only 2 eyes, which is not very much like a spider at all. It also apparently had a huge body with a shell, and I don't know any spiders that live in shells. According to this scientist, the famous spider is actually more like a crab than an arachnid. Had this monstrosity actually been a spider, it would have been around 3 feet in length. Number 2. Largest spider fossil ever. The largest spider fossil ever has just been found recently in China. This is not the biggest spider that has ever existed, but it is the biggest complete fossil ever discovered in history. It's being called Nephila jurassica, and it measures about 2 inches from end to end. That's obviously not huge, but it's pretty significant for a fossil. It dates back all the way to the middle of the Jurassic period, about 165 million years ago. And even more interesting is that this spider is from the same family that still exists today. It's basically the fossil of an ancient orb weaver spider. Today's orb weaver spiders can grow to be at least 5 inches in diameter and are notorious for spinning huge silk webs that can trap bats and birds. There is still relatively little known about this prehistoric spider, but the fact that we could find a spider fossil this old in itself is pretty incredible. The next time you see a spider in your house, remember, it's actually a dinosaur. Number 1. Redback spider on the toilet. The last story takes us back to the toilet. It's a pretty tragic story about a young Australian tradesman and his precious parts. The first incident occurred when a man who preferred not to be named was bitten on his ding-dong by a redback spider while sitting on a porta potty on a job site. As you can imagine, being bitten by any spider on the tip of your little gentleman would be extraordinarily unpleasant. But being bit by a redback spider, which is essentially the Australian version of the black widow spider, is straight up terrifying. The man was rushed to the hospital and everything turned out to be okay in the end. But here's where things get funny. 5 months after this man was bitten rather rudely by the spider, he was using another portable toilet at the building site when the exact same thing happened to him again in the exact same spot. And if you don't believe me, this is a real story that was even reported by the BBC because it's just so ridiculous. According to the man himself, he looked down and saw the enormous spider with its disgusting black legs moving around the rim of the toilet after it had chomped down pretty much in the exact same spot as last time. Everything turned out to be okay again, but the sheer bad luck of being this guy is a little hard to handle. It seems impossible, but it really did happen. I can safely say I will never use a porta potty in Australia ever. Number 10. Vaquita. The first of the incredible impressively miniature creatures is an animal like no other. We all know what a dolphin looks like, right? But did you know that one type of porpoise is super small? Meet the vaquita, which translates to little cow. Not very flattering, but it's a pretty accurate description. At least this one isn't being turned into hamburgers, or if it were, they would have to be pretty bite-sized. They are very cute and very endangered. Confusingly, the vaquita has also been compared to a panda. One look at its face will tell you why. Those black rings around its eyes and black lips suggests a bamboo diet rather than anything like plankton or shellfish. Females grow larger than males at 5 feet or 1.5 meters. Still on the small side. Compared to some of the truly microscopic animals in the world of wildlife, you might think this creature is actually kind of big, but the vaquita is considered the smallest of the cetaceans. Unfortunately, their home in the northern Gulf of California, Mexico, is popular with fishermen, who often catch the vaquitas by accident while pursuing other fish called the totoba. The bladders of the totoba are used in Chinese medicine, which makes them desirable for fishing. Sadly, the vaquitas get caught up in the same nets and traps that the fishermen set for other creatures, an unwanted casualty of the sea. No one helps them either, because they're loners and don't socialize. Many die in solitary and frightening deaths, which is why it's very important to protect some of these precious little dolphins in order to save them from a terrible fate. What do you think? Should there be penalties for accidentally catching these petite creatures? Would it be better to keep the species in captivity in aquariums? Let me know what you think should be done in the comments below, and if you haven't already, click the subscribe button to stay up to date on more awesome facts every day. Number 9. Dwarf lantern shark. Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water. Well, actually, it is if the dwarf lantern shark passes by, since it's not particularly vicious. There are far meaner fish in South America, of course, but you should not be in much trouble if you encounter this creature. The scientific handle is Etmotsporus perryi, in honor of late biologist and renowned shark expert Perry Gilbert. He lent his name to the planet's smallest set of jaws. At 6 inches or 15 centimeters, it's noticeable if you squint, but on the whole, it only encounters unwitting fishermen. Generally, the dark brown sharks keep out of the way, down in the depths, yet sometimes a net will bring them up accidentally. What species fear the dwarf lantern shark? Even more minuscule prey like krill and shrimp, who are drawn to its mysterious glow before being chomped up with the approximate 50 tiny teeth in its mouth. This small predator is such a mystery it wasn't even on scientists' radar till the 1960s. They had no idea it even existed. What we do know is that it's part of the dogfish family. Aside from that, there are precious few morsels of information to go on, which just makes the dwarf lantern shark even more fascinating and worthy of study. Number 8. Bee hummingbird. Have you ever wondered what the world's smallest bird is? Well, this title goes to the bee hummingbird of Cuba, or Melissuga heleni. Cuba is known for a great many things, but for tourists, there is always the allure of its cigars. That's ironic, considering that this amazing creature could curl up and roll itself into one. It grows to around 2 inches or 6 centimeters and weighs approximately 2.5 grams. This thing may be tiny, but it's a real dynamo. Beating its wings at no less than 200 times every second, the bee hummingbird is highly colourful and more than a little cute. That's right, 200 times per second. Unbelievable. And it looks harmless and hyperactive. Harmless, that is, unless you're a mosquito, in which case you'll be on the lunch menu. In fact, these birds have more in common with insects since they're so small. Other birds aren't flapping their wings or jumping around like this hummingbird, but insects are. They became the planet's smallest bird through the process of natural selection. Hummingbird societies operate by having a big bird and a little bird living in tandem. Over generations, the bee hummingbird has played second fiddle to the mighty emerald, sticking to a diminutive diet of pesky insects and small flowers. Now, for this animal, size isn't everything, especially when it comes to attracting a mate. The males grow a handsome red and pink hood and sing proud songs to impress the females. Sounds great! It's a wholesome avian love story ready to be written. Number 7. Bumblebee bat. Just like the bee hummingbird, the bumblebee bat is named after the iconic insect that everyone knows and loves. It's also one more impossibly small animal who generates a buzz, so to speak. You can find this miniature bat flapping around the forests of Thailand and Myanmar. It dwells in limestone caverns, using the power of echolocation in order to find its way around in the darkness. This is the unique power that bats have, and even as the most petite member of the family, it's still an important skill. Where this species differs from its cousins, of course, is in its size. At the absolute biggest, the body of the bumblebee bat measures a whopping 1.3 inches or 3 centimeters. Even with its wings spread out as wide as possible, its wingspan might top out at 7 inches or 17 centimeters. Its colouring is either reddish-brown or grey, and another popular name for this species is Kitty's hog-nosed bat because of its pig-style face. Why these things are referred to as bees, we have no idea. Like many bats and birds, these guys feed on insects and would probably nibble on some of their namesake insects if they could get hold of one. Don't underestimate them because of their size though. Even if you were just trying to be friendly, if you touch them, this could interfere with their natural behaviour and you run the risk of being bitten as a result. But it's not just that, you could get an infection. Bats are notorious for harbouring a lot of pesky viruses in their bloodstream, as humanity found out the hard way earlier in 2020. So even if you want to see them in person, it's a lot better to see them with your eyes from far away. Don't bother them and they won't bother you. You have to feel a little bit sorry for the bumblebee bat though. Not only do they have their sleep disturbed by people looking to harvest their guano or poop, which has been used in certain chemical processes for hundreds of years, but some people actually try to capture the bats, kill them, dry them out and sell them as souvenirs. What a gruesome way to remember a trip to Southeast Asia. I'd prefer a t-shirt. Number 6. Jerboas. If anything's going to top the cuteness charts of the animal kingdom, it's this little creature. Meet jerboa. There are 33 species of this incredible animal, so even though it's amongst the smallest rodents on the planet, the jerboa is certainly prolific. They get from A to B by leaping using their super long back legs. Balancing with their tails, jerboas can cover a few feet in a single bound. Pretty good for a tiny desert rodent. How big are they? Let's look at the dwarf three-toed jerboa, native to Pakistan and Afghanistan. Typically, one of these adorable animals will reach 2 inches or 4 centimeters. That's around the size of a fist. A strange fact about jerboas is that despite the hot weather, they don't actually drink water. They prefer extracting moisture from the foods they eat, like plants and insects. I'd prefer a nice tall glass of ice water myself, but each to their own. Jerboas probably have the biggest celebrity status of any of the obscure tiny animals around the world. The five-toed pygmy species was the star of a hit internet video. It is also known for appearing on a Russian stamp. Meanwhile, during World War II, the Egyptian jerboa became the logo of the British fighting force, the Desert Rats. These are some remarkable and recognisable creatures, basically like miniature kangaroos that live all throughout the Middle East and Africa. Number 5. Hippocampus denise. Check out one of the smallest seahorses on record at just about a single inch or 2.5 centimeters. The Hippocampus denise, also called Denise's pygmy seahorse, is named after Denise Tackett, a diver and photographer who spent hundreds of hours underwater observing the behaviour of these little guys, and sadly died in 2015. Her legacy lives on in this brightly coloured little fellow, who blends in perfectly to the Gorgonian coral with his orange body and bumpy appearance. The pygmy seahorse is a versatile creature when it comes to habitat, matching its environment perfectly with amazing camouflage skills. Swimming in the waters of the Western Pacific, they've been seen in places like Australia and Papua New Guinea. Or rather not seen, such is their talent for becoming part of the scenery. I mean, if you were an inch long, you'd probably want to hide out in the holes in a coral reef and avoid the spotlight too. Male seahorses carry a heavy burden, in that they look after the eggs before the pups are born. Holding them inside a pouch, it really is a case of daddy knows best. It just goes to show, the smallest animals reveal some of the most intriguing secrets. Have you ever been lucky enough to see a seahorse? In the wild or just in an aquarium? Let me know in the comments below. Number 4. Speckled Padloper Tortoise. Named after the speckle effect on its shell for obvious reasons, the speckled padloper is the smallest tortoise on record. The males grow just over 3 inches or 8 centimeters, and the females beat them at nearly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. They're also referred to by the title Chersobius signatus, and also speckled cape. Found in the vicinity of Little Namakwa Land, which is a stretch of coastal Africa between Namibia and South Africa, they make a slow but stunning sight with their shells, which are coloured gold and beige. These have serrated edges too, making them a little less appetizing for predators. Of course, if you were a tiny tortoise, you'd need all the natural armour you could get. But we humans have little to fear from them. They don't eat flesh, just fruits and flowers. Diet-wise, they consume chicory, dandelions and plantains. Sadly, the padloper is on the endangered species list due to poaching. It's awful to think someone would look at a creature like that and want to grab it, but that's the way it is with bigger species. They take whatever they can get. Try to take pictures and leave the tortoises alone if you ever find yourself adventuring down there. Number 3. Spruce Fir Moss Spider. Living in the South Appalachian Mountains is this 8-legged arachnid, the smallest of its kind. It may look terrifying up close, but don't worry arachnophobes, this guy's absolutely minuscule. The biggest a spruce fir moss spider can get is 0.15 inches, that's 4 millimeters. Hardly horror movie material. If it did appear in a movie, you'd need a magnifying glass to see it. The creepy creature is found in spruce fir trees in forested areas, hence the name. To be more precise, they live on moist patches of moss or mats, where they keep themselves hydrated while they wait for a passing insect to become a snack. These spiders are horrified of the prospect of drying out, which is understandable. Hydration is key. If you still feel scared, even of a little thing like this, then you should know this is another animal classified as endangered. As its habitat is destroyed, the moss runs out, and the spruce fir-loving arachnid is in big trouble. This is another classic example of wildlife having much more to fear from us than we do from them. Number 2. Thorius arboreus. The animals keep getting smaller and smaller and more difficult to find. Look at Thorius arboreus, a salamander from Mexico. Intrepid explorers who venture into the forests of Sierra de Juarez in the area of Oaxaca might find one, but they've got to tread carefully. It's dangerous, wild territory down there. Their eyes are big and stick out, but that's about all that does when it comes to this fellow. A big Thorius arboreus specimen would be approximately 0.7 inches or 18 millimeters. If you did get a good look at one, you'd be in for a treat. Size aside, they are beautiful and fascinating to behold. Some have a red stripe along their dorsal section, others are patterned like a plate. What do they eat? Soft plants, tiny insects, or whatever they can manage to eat. The animal is known for not having teeth to chew with. The smaller they are, the tougher their lives are. As with many entries on our list, these poor salamanders are finding their habitat squeezed in the wake of lots of human expansion. The way things are going, they might not have much of a place to wander around in much longer. Number 1. Pediphrine amoensis frog. This tiny frog from Papua New Guinea is the smallest known vertebrate in the world. Of course, it fits right in the palm of your hand. In fact, you could fit 100 of them there. At just 0.27 inches or 7 millimeters long, the Pediphrine amoensis is super small. Blink and you'll miss it. The experts who found this amazing little dude nearly did just that. In 2009, they were exploring leaf litter on the forest floor. While the name leaf litter sounds like a bunch of leaves dirtying up the ground, it's actually a very moist and dense environment for things to live in. Pediphrine amoensis camouflages itself there, though it can be detected via the sounds it makes. Even that can be confusing, as the clever little creatures imitate insect noises. What happened in the end was that some of the litter was scooped up and dumped in a bag to examine later. Scientists were thrilled to see all these little frogs hopping around inside. They had found the world's smallest frog. If you want to see the colour of their skin, you'll need to use a magnifying glass, or better yet, a microscope to get a better perspective. Would you like to try? It's not easy to get your hands on one of these micro frogs, but they do look like they would make adorable pets. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 10. The coelacanth. The coelacanth is one of those animals that likely exists, but it might not. This prehistoric fish has been alive for over 400 million years. It was actually thought to have been extinct until it was rediscovered off the coast of South Africa back in 1938. It managed to hide in the ocean for literally millions of years. This fish is even known as the living fossil fish. However, nobody actually knows how many of these beasts are still living in the ocean. Back in 1994, a survey estimated that the population could be somewhere between 230 and 650, but keep in mind that was over 20 years ago. They could actually be extinct again, or at least close to it. This prehistoric beast and its existence in our waters is skeptical at best. In the past decade, there have been reports of around 19 of these fish being caught in nets around the coast of Tanzania, but that isn't really proof that they are thriving. The coelacanth very well might have popped its head out of the extinction window only to go back into the abyss. With the number of fish in the ocean decreasing at such alarming rates, it wouldn't be a big surprise if these dinosaurs were gone again very soon. Number 9. Megatherium. The giant sloth is a prehistoric animal that once lived and thrived in the jungles of South America. And even though paleontologists say that giant sloths died off thousands of years ago near the end of the last ice age, right around the time that woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers also disappeared, there is some sketchy evidence that the giant prehistoric sloth could still be hiding in the density of the South American jungles. It's all about the legend of the Mapinguari. It is said to be a frightening prehistoric monster that lives in the darkest corners of the forests. The legend has been around for generations in South America, but there might be a lot more to it than just bedtime stories. So far as the legends go, this monster stands at least 9 feet tall. It has huge claws and its feet face backward. It even has an extra mouth on its belly. It's said that this monster eats herds of cattle and has even assaulted at least one human. Mainstream scientists say that the existence of such a creature is impossible, but it does sound a lot like the giant sloth. There have been no confirmed sightings of any such beast, but that doesn't mean it can't exist. The description is almost spot on to what a giant ground sloth would look like. They walked on all fours, and when standing on their hind legs, they loomed over 10 feet tall. They also had huge claws and special backward-facing feet that they used for digging. Number 8. The Megalodon. The Megalodon has risen in popularity a lot over the last few years. It's widely regarded as the largest shark that ever lived on Earth, and one of the biggest predators in our planet's history. Megalodons roamed the sea starting about 28 million years ago, and they supposedly went extinct 1.6 million years ago. Most scientists believe they were wiped out during the Pleistocene extinction, one of the great extinction events that wiped out a huge portion of life on the planet. The Megalodon was massive. Some of the teeth discovered were at least 7 inches long. Reconstructions using fossilized remains put the Megalodon at around a maximum length of 54 feet. That would make it 3 times larger than a current great white shark. But whether these giants of the deep still exist somewhere deep in our oceans is seriously doubtful. The issue here is that nobody has any real evidence to suggest they do exist, but there is also no evidence that says 4 or 5 of them couldn't still be lurking around 10,000 feet below the surface of the water. There could definitely be one lurking around somewhere, but scientists have not managed to find it. To be completely honest, it's not very likely, but it's not impossible either, and that's what's so exciting about the Megalodon. Take the megamouth shark for example. This shark was not discovered until 1976, and it's pretty enormous. It's about 15 feet long, and it lives around 15,000 feet deep. Still, just because one big shark eluded us until the 70s doesn't mean the Megalodon isn't still eluding us now, or does it? Number 7. Gigantopithecus. Gigantopithecus was the largest primate that ever existed on our planet, and it was twice as tall as an adult human. It's also very likely that this huge ape could very well still exist. Sightings of Bigfoot, also known as the Sasquatch, have been going on for thousands of years. All over North America and even in South America, there have been reports of giant hairy creatures at least 10 feet tall that look like a mix between a monkey and a man. And what we are calling Bigfoot could actually be the Gigantopithecus. This is obviously not confirmed by anyone, and according to Live Science, the prehistoric primate went extinct a few 100,000 years ago. Plus, it actually roamed the forests of Southeast Asia, not North America. But that doesn't mean one of its relatives couldn't have survived the ages and somehow made it into the wilderness of North America. Considering how smart the great primate probably was even millions of years ago, it's undoubtedly capable of hiding from humans in some of the wildest places left. The Gigantopithecus stood over 10 feet tall. It weighed around 600 pounds, and there have actually been very few fossils of the animal discovered over the years. There have only been teeth and partial pieces of the primate's jaws found. This has left a lot of questions surrounding the evolution of the primate, what exactly it looked like, and how exactly it went extinct. All anyone knows is that if Bigfoot really does exist, there is actually a scientific chance that it could be the legendary Gigantopithecus in hiding. Number 6. The immortal plesiosaur. Plesiosaurs were dinosaurs. They were a type of marine reptile that existed millions of years ago. There were many different kinds of them living in our oceans, but they were all relatively similar. Keep in mind that this was about 65 million years ago. But nonetheless, there could very well still be not just one plesiosaur, but a few of them still living on our planet, disguised as the Loch Ness Monster. The plesiosaurs all had very similar features. They were all reptiles with a fat body and a long neck that hunted fish in our prehistoric oceans. Even though they were wiped out, because there were so many different species of this type of animal, it is possible that somewhere in a remote pocket they could still be thriving. A lot of people would love to believe that the Loch Ness Monster is in fact a giant prehistoric plesiosaur, one of many that have been living for years inside the loch. And while I love the idea of it, and it's hard to debate the uncanny similarities between what these marine dinosaurs looks like and our common idea of what the Loch Ness Monster looks like, there are some serious issues. For one thing, the Loch Ness Monster has supposedly been spotted on land. Plesiosaurs were unable to venture out of the water. But the biggest issue of all is that as a marine predator, plesiosaur would need so many fish to survive that it could never have made it 65 million years inside of Loch Ness. It's just straight up not possible. Still, who knows for sure? Maybe there is one of these prehistoric beasts hanging around somewhere unseen by us. Number 5. Dinosaurs. This may come as a bit of a surprise, but some people don't think the dinosaurs ever went extinct. Of course, a lot of these are the same people who think the Earth is flat and lizard people are in charge of the government. Still, we can humour the possibility that dinosaurs are still lurking around and kicking about. The biggest win for the possibility of dinosaurs being alive is that nobody can demonstrate with 100% certainty that every last T-Rex vanished off the face of the Earth and is never coming back. Because after all, there is an astronomically small chance that some species in some part of the world managed to breed in very small numbers without ever being discovered. There are lots of reports of there being a dinosaur living discreetly in the jungles of the Congo, but of course, it's impossible to prove fact or fiction. That being said, dinosaurs probably don't exist today outside of chickens, crocodiles, and rats. Some creationists still cling to the idea that dragons mentioned in the Bible and in ancient folk tales actually speak of dinosaurs. And of course, all the conspiracy theorists jump on board and claim that dinosaurs could have actually gone extinct much later than previously imagined, after being hunted down by a bunch of valiant knights. But it's probably not true. Number 4. The killer of the Megalodon. If you want an example of prehistoric creatures alive today, look no further than the great white shark. Most of us already know these sharks are prehistoric and come from millions of years ago. But what you may not know is that some experts believe great white sharks are actually what eventually killed off the Megalodon, which could actually add to the possible evidence of a small number of Megalodons still living in the oceans today, but maybe very deep down where they can hide from their arch enemies. The story goes like this. For 20 million long years, the Megalodon was the king of the ocean. It was a 50-foot super predator, and out of nowhere, it vanished. According to Science Alert, a new study has found that the Megalodon supposedly went extinct right around the time when the great white shark rose to become the apex predator of the world's oceans. With this new timeline, experts believe that the great white sharks, who first showed up on Earth about 6 million years ago, were better predators and were able to beat the Megalodon at its own game, stealing all of its food and rising to the top of the food chain, therefore forcing the Megalodon into hiding. So, while the Megalodon may have been the hugest ocean predator ever, our very own great white sharks were actually more effective. Number 3. Woolly mammoths. The majority of woolly mammoth fossils have been discovered in Russia, in the Siberian permafrost. This is because the vast and mostly empty regions of eastern Russia were once home to some of the most incredible prehistoric animals, such as woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and even ancient lions. It makes sense that all these fossils are hiding underneath the ice, especially since most of these animals only went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Our ancestors actually lived alongside the amazing woolly mammoth. Could such a beast still exist in the remote Siberian taiga? The answer is maybe. A recent video posted online actually showed what appeared to be a woolly mammoth crossing a river, but a blurry video on YouTube is not to be trusted. If you talk to the local Siberians, some will say yes and some will say no. There's a famous story from the 1940s in which a military pilot flew over the dense northern regions of Russia and spotted a small herd of animals that looked a whole lot like woolly mammoths. And there was another story of 1978 in which people saw what they believed to be woolly mammoths congregated near a very remote river. It's hard to believe, I agree. These accounts are all nothing but urban legends. But considering the last mammoths lived very recently, it does feel like something that should be possible. According to the director of the Pleistocene Park in Yakutia, Russia, the very last woolly mammoths lived on a small island in the east about 3,380 years ago. That would have been during the Roman Empire. Number 2. Saber-toothed tiger. This is the most ridiculous story that has ever been a story. The chances of a saber-toothed tiger still roaming around in the wild is about the same as a pack of woolly mammoths. It's probably not happening. But that didn't stop Tiger King star Joe Exotic from trying to bring back the saber-toothed species by forcing his animals to mate. If anyone saw the hit Netflix show Tiger King, they know all about Joe Exotic. Supposedly, he had an obsession with freakish lions and tiger hybrids, and one of his dreams was to somehow breed and crossbreed until he could recreate an Ice Age predator. As reported by the Daily Star, Joe did manage to create a liger, but of course he never made a saber-toothed anything. He even claims that he was working with genetic experts at a Texas university to try and engineer extinct prehistoric animals. But almost anything this lunatic said was false, and we will probably never get to see a saber-toothed tiger or lion ever in real life, unfortunately. Number 1. Titanoboa. The Titanoboa was an enormous snake believed to have lived about 60 million years ago. It would have lived in the same time right after the dinosaurs went extinct, and on average it's believed these snakes grew to be around 40 or 50 feet long. They also weighed over a ton. In terms of prehistoric animals that could still exist, the Titanoboa is the number 1 suspect. Unlike woolly mammoths or Tyrannosaurus rexes, the Titanoboa would be extremely difficult to find. Even though these monstrosities are so long and huge, they would be living in rivers in the Amazon jungle where almost nobody goes. They would be super difficult to locate, especially if there were only a handful of them left. There has been no definitive proof, and despite several fringe news reports stating that local Amazonian tribes have seen the prehistoric snake themselves, it's just not confirmed. However, it is highly likely that something huge and slithering could be hidden in the jungle. It could be a different species of anaconda, a new type of evil snake that can swallow a person, or the last remaining Titanoboa in existence. Keep in mind that alligators and crocodiles are prehistoric monsters, and they would have lived about the same time as Titanoboa. So, it's really not as far-fetched as it sounds. It's definitely more realistic than a marine reptile from 65 million years ago living in Loch Ness. Number 10. Decapitated cockroaches. Cockroaches are famous for a lot of reasons. First, because they are absolutely disgusting and freak people out. And secondly, because everyone knows that in the event of a nuclear holocaust, the only survivors left will be rats and cockroaches. But there is actually a third thing that makes cockroaches famous as well, and it's their uncanny ability to live without their heads. That's right, cockroaches can be decapitated and continue living for weeks. According to a biochemist at the University of Massachusetts Amherst who studies the development of cockroaches, it's important to first understand why a human or another animal can't survive a decapitation. This may seem obvious, but the main reasons you die when your head is cut off are because you bleed to death, you can't eat without your head, and you can't breathe without your mouth. Plus, your brain would obviously be gone. But in the case of cockroaches, they don't really function the same way we do. Cockroaches do not have a large network of blood vessels like us humans. Instead, they have something known as an open circulatory system, and so there is not very much pressure inside the system. This means that when you cut the head off of a cockroach, their necks simply seal off by clotting. Because of this, they won't bleed to death. Plus, cockroaches don't breathe out of their mouths. They breathe through tiny little holes in each body segment. That means they can breathe without having a head. Plus, roaches apparently don't need their brains. The cockroach's brain does not control their breathing. As a result, when a cockroach is decapitated, it can simply keep on going because of all its functions will still work, and oxygen is still carried directly into the insect's tissues without needing a mouth to breathe. The only issue is that eventually the cockroach will need to eat, after maybe 2 weeks, and then they will die because they can't eat anything without a mouth. Number 9. Bee. A honeybee might not be able to live after death, but they can still get their vengeance. What I'm trying to say is that even after a bee dies, it can still sting you. A honeybee can sting even after it's had its brains smashed. And it can even sting after the stinger has been removed from its body. This is because the bee's nervous system is extremely complicated and more decentralized than our own. If you were to somehow get a bee's stinger stuck in your body, the nervous system of the bee, even after death, will still work automatically to pump venom from the venom sac directly into you. The exoskeleton, muscles, and nerve ganglion will still act just like they would if the bee were still alive. The only thing that the bee can't do is actively sting you. You have to be silly enough to poke yourself with the stinger. And after that, nature just kind of does its own thing. In fact, a lot of animals in the wild are instinctively aware of the bee stinger and its immortal power. The California jay scrub will decapitate the honeybee and eat its head, leaving the abdomen and the stinger behind because it knows that even in death, the honeybee won't stop stinging. Number 8. Octopus arms. Octopuses are definitely the coolest animals in the entire ocean. These are the true aliens on our planet, and there are so many different aspects of an octopus that makes them amazing, it's impossible to detail them all at once. But what we're here to talk about is how an octopus's arms, or their tentacles, can still react for up to an hour after being cut off from their dead body. They will even try to pick up food and feed a mouth that isn't there. This is because octopus tentacles are filled with an incredible number of neurons and nerves, and each tentacle basically has its very own brain. Not only can each arm work independently, but each sucker can also work independently. And a lot of this independence has nothing to do with the octopus's brain. Think of it like if your arms and fingers could do everything without your brain telling them to. So, when someone cuts off your arm, your fingers will still find your cell phone and start texting. It's basically the same thing with an octopus. Not only will an octopus's arms continue to move on their own after being separated from the host body, but if the octopus is still alive and has one of its tentacles cut off, it can simply regrow a new tentacle. It has regenerative properties that are far superior even to that of a lizard. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the octopus can regrow its tentacles using a special protein called acetylcholinesterase. Humans actually have this protein too, but our stores are much less active than an octopus. Number 7. Salamander regeneration. Let's keep moving with regeneration. Octopuses and salamanders are two of the most capable animals on the planet at regrowing their limbs. But salamanders take it a step further. Not only can a salamander regrow an entire limb, but a salamander can regenerate parts of its major organs. A new study of the axolotl, a small aquatic salamander, has revealed that special immune cells called macrophages are critical for regenerating lost limbs. With this information, researchers are hopeful that they can somehow transfer it into the human system so that maybe one day we can regenerate our own flesh. According to an expert from the Australian Regenerative Medicine Institute, in the future we may be able to reverse engineer the power of salamanders into human therapies. But of course, we are a far way off from this science. Number 6. Headless toad. You have undoubtedly heard of the headless horseman, but what about the headless toad? A recent video has surfaced of a headless toad leaping about a Connecticut forest, and it has apparently left scientists stumped. According to Global News, the adult toad was discovered in 2016 by a herpetologist at the University of Massachusetts. The toad looked completely healthy, with perfectly functioning legs and arms, but it was missing its eyes, nose, jaws, and its tongue. It only had a small hole where its mouth should have been. Because it was early spring when the toad was found, it had probably just come out of brumation, which is the toad equivalent of hibernation. After posting the video of the headless toad online, nobody could come forth with a proper answer. The best theory is that the toad was attacked during hibernation, but its attacker didn't finish the job. Then, when the toad woke up, it just kept on living its life without its head. But you have to wonder what exactly is going on inside the non-existent brain of this toad. Does it know that it has no head? How does it even know where it's going? Another theory on how the toad lost its head but continued to survive is a little more disturbing. A wildlife veterinarian suggested that it could have been a parasite known as the flesh-eating toad fly larvae. This really nasty fly lays its eggs inside the soft tissues of a toad while it's hibernating, and then when the larvae hatch, they eat the toad's flesh. The toad very likely could have woken up in the middle of this with its head gone. Number 5. Fruit flies in suspended animation. Who would have thought fruit flies would be the first to master suspended animation? New research at the Florida Atlantic University is now saying that fruit flies can basically put themselves into a state of cryogenic sleep. Whenever the fruit fly senses low oxygen levels in its body, it can put itself into a coma-like state where it then stays for up to 72 hours. You might actually have noticed this before. If you've ever seen some fruit flies sitting in a bit of water as if they've drowned, and then they just randomly got up and flew away, they were just in a state of suspended animation. And let me tell you why. When any creature's body gets low on oxygen, organs begin to function poorly and the brain begins to stop working. This is why you can suffocate to death without oxygen. In order to survive, flies have figured out how to put themselves into suspended animation to protect the neurons in its brain. The human equivalent of this would be if someone began to strangle you, or if you were oxygen deprived because of some environmental issue, like drowning, and rather than dying, you just put yourself into a suspended animation so that the cells inside of your brain didn't get damaged with the lack of oxygen. Then, you would wake up 3 days later and hopefully there would be more oxygen in your body. Number 4. Deadly snakeheads. Rattlesnakes are bad enough as it is. These horribly venomous serpents are an absolute menace. If you're a native of Texas, you have probably had at least one experience with a rattlesnake in your life. But you should know that these venomous creatures can indeed live after death. They are very similar to bees in this regard. An excellent example is from a recent story in 2018 when a Texas man narrowly escaped death after a decapitated rattlesnake sunk its fangs into him. According to the local news station, this fella had been working in his yard in South Texas on the weekend when his wife spotted an evil rattlesnake. It was a western diamondback, and to protect his wife, this guy leapt into action with a shovel and chopped off the snake's head. Everything seemed well and good. Everyone seemed safe, but then as he bent over to pick up the severed head of the snake, it struck out at him, sunk its fangs into his hand, and filled him with venom. According to the man himself, the head literally spun around just to attack him. This is obviously not a great situation to be in. The western diamondback rattlesnake is a very nasty bite and is potentially lethal. It causes blood clots and can make your kidneys shut down, while also causing internal bleeding, damaging muscles, and causing the area around the bite to rot. If left untreated, the mortality rate is about 10 or 20%. As for the attack from beyond the grave, snakes are cold-blooded and can continue to function on impulse after death for a short time. This includes striking out even without a body. Number 3. Flatworm life after death. How would you like to be able to regrow your head? Well, if you were a flatworm, you absolutely could. These little worms can regenerate their heads and tails after being cut into pieces. This is unlike other types of worms that can only partially regenerate body parts. Flatworms are special in that you can cut off any piece of the worm and it magically turns itself into a new worm. This is according to a molecular biologist named Jochen Rink. He claims that if you cut a flatworm anywhere along their length, the part of the worm that still has its head will grow a new tail, while the part of the worm that has its tail will grow a new head. You essentially get 2 new worms. The science behind this is obviously complicated. It basically involves signals and stem cells that can trigger the growth of new body parts when necessary. And apparently, with a bit of tinkering, flatworms can even be forced into growing a secondary head rather than a tail. In this case, it will be a 2-headed worm, and each head will control one half of the body. You can even make a worm with no heads and 2 tails, which makes it a little confusing as to why these animals need a head in the first place. Number 2. The immortal jellyfish. It's time to talk about the immortal jellyfish. It's one thing to survive in a brutal environment or to regrow some limbs when one of them gets bitten off, but it's something else altogether when you can literally live forever. There is only one miraculous animal that can do this, and it's a species of jellyfish known as the immortal jellyfish. It was first discovered in the 1880s in the Mediterranean Sea and has since become a pretty famous animal on Earth. It can literally live forever. First, the jellyfish starts as larva. Then, this larva develops from a fertilized egg. The larva will swim around for a while, then settle at the bottom of the sea floor where it grows into a cylindrical colony of polyps. After some time, the polyps will grow into animals that we know as jellyfish, and these jellyfish will grow into adulthood in just a few weeks. When fully grown, this jellyfish is only about 0.18 inches across. That's smaller than a pinky nail. You would basically never see this thing, and yet it has 90 white tentacles and is fully transparent. Just imagine being that small and having that many tentacles. But here's where the immortal comes into play. In response to physical damage, starvation, or anything that could threaten its existence, the jellyfish reverts back into a polyp. This polyp then starts the process of growth all over again. Basically, the jellyfish turns back into a baby, slowly grows into an adult, and then when it feels near death is near, it will transform back into a baby. In theory, A single jellyfish can go through this cycle infinitely and forever. Number 1. The Green Hydra. The last on the list is an animal that doesn't actually live after death because it has devised a way to escape aging and therefore live eternally. But it does this in a different way to the immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish goes through a continuous cycle of birth and regrowth. But the Green Hydra is a spindly freshwater polyp that can seemingly live forever without aging. Unlike almost every other multicellular species, the Green Hydra does not show any signs of deteriorating with age, according to research published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. You might wonder how scientists could figure this out. And it wasn't easy. Over a span of 8 years, researchers kept an eye on a massive group of Green Hydras in a closed environment and found no evidence of aging at all. And after this experiment, one of the researchers believes that the Green Hydra can live forever under the right circumstances. It doesn't need to live after death because it never dies in the first place. Of course, in the wild, these polyps do die all the time because of disease, predators, water contamination, and all kinds of other external influences. But under the perfect conditions, the Green Hydra could really live for all time because it simply doesn't age. Number 10. The smallest horses. When you think of the most unique horses in the world, you may picture a tall, lean horse with a flowing mane and wild tail. But some horses, although smaller in stature, are equally as unique. A special breed, known as miniature horse, is by nature smaller than your average horse. But one known as Thumbelina is even smaller, standing at only 17 inches tall, that's 43 centimeters. Due to a physical condition called dwarfism, she is exceptionally small, even among others of her breed. The problem is dwarfism in horses causes problems with their legs, results in deformed skulls, and gives them a wider body, which can cause ongoing complications and be debilitating to the animal. Another miniature horse known as Einstein from New Hampshire was born smaller than Thumbelina, but he does not have dwarfism and is instead a healthy miniature horse. Taller than Thumbelina, he is in fact the smallest stallion in the world, measuring at only 14 inches tall, that's 35 centimeters. Sadly, Thumbelina passed away in 2018, but another horse of small stature has been making waves. A miniature Appaloosa from Poland named Bubble is just 22 inches tall, that's 56 centimeters. But Bubble doesn't let his newfound fame go to his head. He visits a local children's hospital once a month to cheer up the young patients. What do you think of these tiny, cute stallions and mares? Would you ever adopt one? Do you prefer it to a dog or cat? I think a pet miniature horse would be a lot of work, but might be well worth it for an animal lover. Let me know your opinion in the comments below. While you're there, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. There are always awesome new videos coming out with facts you'll be glad to know, and you won't want to miss even one. Number 9. The tallest horse. From the smallest horse, we meet the tallest horse, Big Jake, who was crowned the world's tallest horse in 2012 by the Guinness Book of World Records. A draft horse from Belgium, Big Jake weighed in at a whopping 240 pounds when he was just a foal. When he reached the age of 7 or 8, his owners realised they had a very special horse on their hands. Compared to an average horse that measures about 50 inches or 1.25 metres tall at the shoulder, Jake's height of 60 inches or 1.5 metres is what sealed the deal with the record books. But his size didn't make him any different. In fact, he was very affectionate with the family who owned him and loved it when they paid extra attention to him. Number 8. Japanese and Chinese horses. Another breed in Japan known as the Noma pony is extremely rare and centuries old, coming from Mongolian horses from the 17th century. At one time, it was illegal to breed small horses, which caused the Nomas to almost go extinct. As adults, these horses stand about 40 inches or 1 metre tall, and a breeding society that was established in the late 1970s took steps to preserve this rare species. Deep in the heart of southern Asia, a different breed known as Guachia is one of a few known horse breeds native to China and is one of the smallest horses bred in that country. Their name, which means under the fruit tree, comes from their common use in orchards. Found standing under the fruit trees as farmers picked them up and put them in baskets, the ponies were carried around the orchards. The breed was believed to be extinct up until 1981, when some reappeared. With a small head and ears and short neck, they come in bay, grey and roan colours. Found in various counties in China, the ponies are good for children riding and driving and are easily moved around in rocky environments. Some statues from 2,000 years ago are believed to depict these rare horses, demonstrating just how old they are. Number 7. Sooty. A particular gene in horses known as the sooty or smutty causes black hairs to grow with the regular coat of the animal, resulting in countershading, dappling and even striping. The feature is sometimes seen in lighter animals with cream dilution. The darker striping and shading can also come out at certain times of the year. Some wonder whether this colouring comes about as a primitive striping found in dark Palominos and dark bay horses. Known as counter shading or colour modifiers, these darker tones can show up in smudges, patches, stripes, spots, or even dabbles. Found in both chestnut and black bases, the colouring is believed to be passed on genetically, though researchers are not sure how and why it is so dominant in some over others. Number 6. Leopard Appaloosa. One look at the Leopard Appaloosa and you will see that it is a truly unique breed of horse. Spotted horses have existed since before horses were domesticated, and they fell out of favour in Europe for centuries before the breed was brought to North America. The most high-profile breed, the American Appaloosa, is just one of many breeds that have these patterns. The most familiar characteristic Appaloosa patterns are the full leopard pattern that consists of holes in the white spotting rather than dark spots on the horse's coat colour. There are two genes that are involved in the formation of Appaloosa patterns, one that controls the presence or absence of Appaloosa characteristics, and another gene that modifies the appearance of the pattern. Number 5. Blue Roan. The blue roan is a rare colour found in some horses. It starts with the foal, who has to have black legs, a genetically black body, and roan, which is a horse's coat colour pattern that has an even mixture of coloured and white hairs on the body. With equal parts coloured fur and white fur, roans with a blue colouring are instantly recognisable. With a 50-50 mix of white and black hairs, they are not actually blue, but a horse with a dark black base. The mix of both black and white hairs gives a blue-hued appearance, which is where it gets its name from. The mane, tail, head and lower legs of the roan can either have less white hair or can be entirely absent. Always roan at birth, blue roans can sometimes be born solid black and shed their baby coats to reveal the roan colour. They are sometimes mistaken for Sabino or grey horses. True blue roans do not have any patterns and their colour is consistent. Even though it can change during the seasons, it doesn't get more grey or white as time goes by. They also have different genes, and interestingly enough, inherited genes don't skip generations, meaning two non-roan parent horses can't produce a roan baby. Some grey horses when they are foals often look roan instead of grey, but grey horses must have a grey parent. So, if your foal has at least one parent that is grey, it is probably not a roan horse. Although they can be rare, there are a few varieties of breeds that can produce true roans, including European draft breeds like the Italian heavyweight and the Rhenish German cold blood. More common in North American breeds, they are found in quarter horses, standard breeds and even mustangs. Two famous roan horses include Royal Blue Brune and Blue Valentine, two horses who ran in races in the 1950s and 1980s. A beautiful horse that is a bit of an optical illusion, the Blue Roan really is a special breed. Number 4. Tobiano. Another unique pattern found on horses is the Tobiano coat, with large, rounded white spots on the body and white legs. The horse also has a dark coloured head. Wondering how horses like the Tobiano get their unique colouring? It is the result of a deletion of colour. Their coat is due to an inversion of chromosomes. The best recognised of all white patterns on horses, they are closely related to pintos. The name of the coat patterns comes from where they appear on the horse's body. Most markings on Tobianos are on the chest or neck. Part of the larger American paint horse breed, Tobianos are well muscled and so versatile. They are used in competitions, to work farms and for trail riding. Would you want a Tobiano? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Bashkir Curly. One look at the Bashkir curly-haired horse and it's easy to see why they turn the heads of anyone who sees them. An ancient breed, there is still a lot of mystery surrounding them and where they come from. Because of that, they have been talked about everywhere from North America to China and even Russia. Some Native Americans were believed to have told stories of a curly-haired horse of the Battle of Little Bighorn, with supposed photographic evidence supporting these tales. In China, curly-haired horses were depicted in art as far back as 16 AD. But could the horse have originated in Russia, where a photo of a curly-haired horse was found, leading people to believe the animal has Russian origins? Wherever they are from, they are said to have originated from a stock of wild horses, with the Sioux people believing them to be a sacred animal, reserved for chiefs and medicine men only. If you have always wanted to ride or own a horse but you are allergic, then the curly horse is for you. They are missing a specific protein in their hair, which makes them hypoallergenic. Their curly coats can sometimes shed completely in summer, leaving them completely bald. Either way, with a unique coat and in colours from beige to blacks, and with both patterns and dilute colours, the curly is a unique breed. Number 2. Knabstrupper. Relatively new in North America, the Knabstrupper is a breed that has been well established in Denmark since 1812. The first, a chestnut mare with leopard spotting, produced a colt who had even more noticeable spots. Later bred to a number of other horses, the mare and her sire produced many offspring with the same stunning spotting and established a new breed in the process. The North American breed has the same colour genes as those from Denmark, but after so many years of crossbreeding, it's hard to tell if there are any true Nubstrappers left. After nearly dying out in the mid-1900s, 3 Appaloosa stallions were brought to Denmark to add new bloods to the breed. The American breed came from one of 3 Appaloosa mares who were mated with a European stallion. Some believe one of the mares, who had a particularly energetic and friendly nature, is said to be the reason the breed is so mild-mannered. 3 distinct types of Nubstrapper have developed, including one bred for sport, one to drive carriages and to serve on military duty, and smaller ponies who work well around children. But they have also developed a number of different variations in colouring, including evenly distributed leopard spots, frosted colouring or spotting, marbling, and some with just a few spots. While they may still be popular today, a cave painting in France that goes back more than 25,000 years shows a very similar horse with striking resemblance to today's Nubstrapper. It seems that the Nubstrapper has long been a prized horse. Number 1. Fjord. The creamy coat of the Norwegian Fjord horse makes it one of the most recognisable horses in the world. But that's not the only thing it is known for. They also have a compact body and a distinct flowing mane. They are considered one of the oldest and purest breeds that migrated to Norway over 4,000 years ago. Even though 90% of the breed are the striking brown dun colour, there are a few extremely rare colourings, including the extremely rare yellow dun, which can have a completely white mane and tail. Most horses have some form of white markings, but the Fjord horse rarely does. Sometimes they do have a small star mark, but if they have one or more marks, they are considered not acceptable for breeding. They get their status as being one of the purest breeds after evidence was found of over 2,000 years of breeding. The evidence was found while excavating Viking burial sites, and there was no crossbreeding from other horses. They are so prized that they are found on the coat of arms of 2 municipalities in Nordfjord, Norway. A strong breed that is relatively small to other horses, they are agile and often used as light draft horses. They are also popular in use for therapeutic purposes, for children with disabilities and in therapy. Sadly, when a few generations were crossbred in the 1800s, the breed nearly died out. But luckily, after seeing undesirable traits appear, like fierce temperament and unattractive colouring, the crossbreeding was stopped, and the Fjord horse regained its place at the top of the horse world. Thanks again for watching, everybody. What is your favourite horse from today's video? Tell me why in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can stay updated on all the newest content coming out. See you next time!